Chaser Report is recorded on Gadigal land.
Striving for mediocrity in a world of excellence. This is the Chaser Report.
Hello and welcome to the Chaser Report with Dom and Charles. I've got a cold, so please bear with me. There's been a lot going on. Charles, how have you coped with the absolute roller coaster of the past, 48 hours or so?
Look, I haven't slept except at night. I mean, that's how. The Russian.
It's been tense.
It was a nail biter, except that when I needed to go to sleep, I just went to sleep because, ultimately.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to know what happened in Russia. Putin's private army of mercenaries turned on him. In scenes reminiscent, I guess, of Game of Thrones. Had he not watched Game of Thrones, Charles, did he not realise that creating a private army just means that at some point in the plot that it's going to turn?
Well, actually, there's been some underreported details about why that guy acted when he did, Prigozhin.
All right. I smell a Charles patented theory. We'll get to that in a second. And an update on the 6 millionth downloader. Goodness me, Charles. We've had a lot of people wanting to be recognised as the
We've had about 6 million people.
AKA getting free shit.
6 million people, I reckon, have already applied to be the 6 million.
Yeah, it's already up to 12 million downloads just because of this exciting promotion. So all of that in a sec. All right, so let's just deal with the 6 million business because people are intrigued by the idea of 6 million people actually listening to this thing over the last few years, but also we're actually not making it up. Normally when we give big numbers like 6 million to do with the Chaser, it's completely fictitious. This is actually true. We have genuinely had 6 million downloads of the podcast, or almost.
Yes.
And we asked you to email podcast@chaser.com.au and explain why you should be recognised as the 6 millionth, because there's no other way to tell other than just make it up.
So the thing that I'd say is when you listen to this explanation of the people who've applied to be the 6 millionth downloader, can you not tell any advertisers or other people what I'm about to tell you, okay? We'll just keep it between ourselves, right?
Yeah, keep it secret. It's
Which is pretty much every single person who's applied goes, well, the reason why I should be the 6 millionth downloader is because I download it twice on my phone using different apps. I download it once on my computer and I download it, 3 times on my work computer or something. And so I have a feeling that we might only have about 3 people listening to it, but they downloaded it 6 million times across various different devices.
As long as they're listening to it each time, that's okay, isn't it? People on Netflix rewatch comedy specials 10 times.
Yes, that's what's happening. Yes, people are listening. They're not just downloading it and then not listening to it. They're downloading it and then religiously listening to it 8 times.
Every time.
Each day.
But Charles, to be fair to us, the fact that anyone bothers to do that to this podcast, it's probably the most flattering thing I've ever heard, that people will help us defraud the numbers. They must genuinely like what we're doing. Or want us to get in trouble.
Or they can't be bothered turning off all the auto download features. They set it up years ago, and it's just like whatever, who cares? And they can't, they can't be bothered putting in the effect. But the other really interesting detail is, I think 100% of people. So we offered to give people an avocado pull toy. Like whoever won the 6 millionth download was going to get an avocado pull toy. The least wanted
Chaser merch in terms of sales, but giving it away for free, I would have thought we'd have huge interest, Charles.
So what has been remarkable is the number of people who have emailed going, look, I don't really want an avocado pull toy, but can I have something else from the Chaser shop instead?
If only you'd done a tiny bit of market research, Charles. I think next time you ponder launching a product, maybe just ask on the podcast, is this concept a terrible one?
Well, I just think you misunderstand the whole point of this promotion. The point of this promotion wasn't to celebrate 6 million downloads. It was to get rid of another avocado pull toy. And the fact that none of you wanted, that is a low blow. We can't even give them away.
As someone who, hypothetically, as a part owner of this business, could have taken one for free, I haven't. Yet. I have a pool. I've got a pool in my communal building. Just haven't really seen that my life would be better with an inflatable avocado.
Let's just say we haven't. You know how usually you have a problem when you've got products sitting on a shelf in a warehouse? Yeah. It's called shrinkage, where employees steal your merchandise. We have not suffered that problem.
Do you want to come up with some sort of discount code?
Yes.
Just in the hope that someone somewhere wants one.
Yes.
Do you want to just come up with a code like pathetic or desperate or something that people can type it in and get a big discount at chasershop.com? If anyone wants the avocado, if you don't, we understand. I feel the same way about it.
It's got to be something that denotes totally poor value and like a complete
What about market failure?
market failure. Yeah. Let's blame the market
type that
on this
in.
one. Yeah.
Okay, so market failure is the code
Market
to get
failure.
a discount on the inflatable avocado.
Okay.
Charles has shelves full of these things. It's costing him money to store them
Now,
at this stage.
I know that that's the top story of the last 48 hours.
Yeah, that's
but
the main story. But Russia's had a few things going on as well.
there's been a minor hiccup there. And I just want to talk about Wagner, the history of Wagner for a second. So the guy, Yevgeny Prigozhin, launched this coup against Putin over the weekend. It wasn't actually against Putin. It was against the military forces. It was against
Yeah, he was
the
kind of clear on
commanders.
that, wasn't he? He said it was
Yeah.
the Russian Ministry of Defense he didn't want, rather
Yes.
than the commander-in-chief thereof, Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, and that's because he accused them, especially the guy who was running the Southern Military Command, who we'll get to in a sec. He accused that guy of actually bombing the Wagner forces in their positions in the Ukraine. Like, essentially, he was accusing them of turning against him, right? And so there was no other choice that he had than to sort of storm into the office and go, hey, what are you doing? You're bombing my sort of thing. But I want to talk about Wagner first, which is, so it was founded in 2008 by a guy called Dmitry Utkin, right? And the reason it was called Wagner, do you know this, Dom? Do you know?
No, I don't. I'm assuming it's got something to do with the composer
Yes.
who got adopted by the fascists. They thought that would be a really great source of sort of imagery for a military group.
Yes,
Is that
that's right. So Utkin's call sign was Wagner, right? And the reason his call sign was Wagner was because Wagner was Hitler's favourite composer, and
Sure.
So he went, well, I like Wagner, and the Wagner group, the troops there, they call themselves the musicians, right? That they are the
Oh,
people
how
who-
chilling.
Yeah.
So can we just remember, Charles, that part of the justification for the invasion in the first place was to denazify Ukraine.
Yes.
Putin claimed that the Ukrainian government, despite being headed by Vladimir Zelensky, who is Jewish, was full of Nazis.
Yes.
So to sort out that problem, he sent in a bunch of people called Wagner who idolised Wagner. Okay,
Well,
that's not weird at all.
The thing is, some sort of pro-Russian people have said, no, that's ridiculous. They're just Wagner because Richard Wagner was a great composer, nothing to do with Nazis.
Nothing to do with the
the
Nazis,
suggestion that Utkin was ever a Nazi is that's up for debate, basically.
Sure.
The one thing that might be a bit of a giveaway is that Utkin apparently does have 4 Nazi tattoos.
Oh, look,
Yeah.
Charles, I've always said it's 5. If you got fewer
Right.
than 5,
Okay.
you're not a real Nazi.
Yeah, right, okay.
That's the rule.
So anyway, they're the people who rose up, and they were mercenary forces. And essentially what happened was this Prigozhin guy, who was Putin's chef, back in the 1990s.
That's the weirdest part of this, isn't it? It's basically like Gordon Ramsay becoming a man with his own private army.
Well, you wouldn't want to give Gordon Ramsay his own private army. Have you seen his behaviour
Exactly.
in the kitchen? Like, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
He'd turn on you.
Yes, he would. He would ultimately turn on you and call you a fucking fucker. The thing that is sort of a little bit underreported about this whole thing is everyone's going, why did he do it? Why did Prigozhin turn against the military forces at this case? He'd just taken out, so in terms of Ukraine was going really badly, and the Wagner forces were brought in because the conventional
Yes.
Russian military wasn't doing very well. Wagner had already done lots of clean-up jobs for Putin over the years militarily. They'd essentially taken over most of the Russian operations in Africa. They'd also done a few
In places like Mali, yeah.
Yeah, but also, places around Eastern Europe, they'd sort of done a few sort of dodge things. And
War crimes, I think, is what you're referring
and
to.
so back in 2014, when Russia first invaded Crimea, they needed a way to hold that space with a bit of plausible deniability that Russia was in fact doing it. And so it was a really convenient thing. It was like outsourcing. It was like, well, we're not actually invading your country. It's just that these completely unconnected private company who happens to have a lot of guns just happens to be roaming around there enforcing Russian.
Just looking for a place to stage the ring cycle.
Yes.
Just coming in town by town, and Meister Singers of Nuremberg.
Yes.
And staging operas for the populace. That's what they were doing.
Basically, a travelling troupe of musicians.
Yes. The travelling Wilburys.
Yeah, that's right.
The travelling Kilburys. More like
it's
it.
sort of in the same way Taylor Swift comes
Yes.
into Australia, charges a fucking fortune, and you're all required to go and see her. Well,
And she has tanks.
but
and
she's got
guns.
tanks as well, yes. So 2014 is when they started getting involved in that whole melee. Right.
Yep.
That then meant that the Wagner forces and the Russian military command were never really they didn't really like each other, right? Like it was sort of a bit like office politics, which is so they brought in this external consultant who then sticks around for years and years and years and has the sort of
They're the PWC.
Yes.
They're the PWC of the Russian military.
Yes, that's right. And they get all the boss character, Putin, gives them all the good staplers and office stationery and whenever there's post-it notes to go around, they get all the yellow ones. And
Yeah, isn't it also true that a lot of the Wagner mercenaries are taken directly from prisons in Russia?
Well,
so basically
yes.
the deal is you can stay in this miserable soul-destroying prison or you can go out and kill. And presumably if you've got convicted murderers, they've got some skills in that area already. And it's just a much better deal going and raping and pillaging and looting in places like Ukraine rather than having to stay in a Russian prison. I mean, I think I would even take that up as an offer.
this is one of the funny things, right, which is not very funny, which is that Prigozhin himself spent 10 years in jail. In the early 1990s, and apparently quite enjoyed the experience, as you do. And so he personally goes around and recruits the prisoners, right? And he doesn't recruit all of them. Like, I thought he'd sort of offered a sort of generalised amnesty, which is if you do 6 months at the front, you get off your crime. But actually, apparently, it's a little bit more. There's a bit more of a threshold to pass, which is Prigozhin's got to look you in the eye and go, "Will this guy kill for me?" Yes, he will.
Wow.
Okay,
well, also,
you've got the offer.
Don't forget in Russia, Charles, you've got a lot of, namby-pamby human rights sympathisers and journalists and people who like democracy. They're all in jail too. You don't want them. They're not
No,
going to
God,
kill
no.
them in front.
Yes, you
Sort
wouldn't
of
want them.
Liberal intellectuals are not
Yes.
going to become killing machines when you send them to Ukraine. They're not going to enjoy
Yes.
the murdering bit.
They just complain about carbon, emissions from the tanks or something. It would just
It's
be
a war
bore.
crime. We can't possibly... the Geneva Convention, Yevgeny, we couldn't do it.
Yes. Oh,
What
no,
bores?
No, exactly. So there's now the funny detail is there's now 40,000 ex-prisoners who have been released onto the streets of Russia under this new amnesty plan because they've done enough time at the front. One of whom, as he was heading home after the Battle of Bakhmut, on about Thursday of last week, he had been in jail for murder. He'd been pardoned. He was coming back from the front, and so he was facing a life of no more murdering, basically. And so what he did is, on the train coming home, he went on a rampage and stabbed 25 people, killing 3 of them. The images are, this is just about 24 hours before the coup happened.
I haven't seen this. Wow.
And it was unbelievable. Like, the amount of blood that comes from stabbing 25 people is just remarkable. It's like the sheets on the beds, because they're all in these sort of bunk bed things, were just red. It was just unbelievable.
So it's worth noting that some of the people who are in Russian prisons actually need to stay there.
Yes,
Like,
and-
it's actually,
Yes.
as much as you joke about the human rights sympathisers, and there are plenty of those, I'm sure, in labour camps and stuff, keep the murderers in prison is generally a pretty good rule for a civilised society.
Well, I think one of the things that Putin has been contending with is that by prioritising the Wagner forces, you are actually unleashing a whole lot of really quite dangerous people onto the streets, and there is a growing problem in that thing. Anyway, get to Friday. Why did Prigozhin move against the Russian military forces then, right? Why was it then and not a week later or a week later? So there's two things. There's two theories. First one, Wagner forces had just very successfully taken the town of Bakhmut. It was the big offensive that Russia had to do. They took 8 months to do it, but they finally did it. And it was the Wagner forces who did that, right? And so they were very victorious, but they then very quickly handed it all over to the Russian military command because Prigozhin didn't want to be stuck then having to defend this city that they just caught.
Such a bore. Such a bore having to administer a country rather than just storm it and break it.
Yeah, having done that, the Southern military commander went, okay, that means we don't really need Wagner anymore because they've done the hard task and we're now in charge. So, and he convinced Putin to come up with a decree that meant that all private military contractors had to fold themselves in and contract themselves to the Russian military and be under Russian military command from July the 1st, i.e. in a week's time, right? Suddenly, the head of Wagner, Prigozhin, was going to be under the command of Colonel General Sergei Kozlovlev, who he hated, who since May he's been going on social media saying these guys are absolute fucking morons. We took Bakhmut. He can't even, command a stapler, right? So he absolutely hates these guys. And suddenly Putin had said, oh, no, Wagner's going to be dissolved and instead you're going to come in under the command of this guy. So, if you... I suppose what I'm saying is you can read this as, oh, this was a move against Putin. Oh, this was some sort of big strategic coup. Or you could say that this was basic office politics 101.
Yes, that makes plenty of sense. It's just like, if PwC had been told you've got to all be hired by the public service.
Yes.
They wouldn't. No one wants to become a public servant, Charles. You shouldn't make someone become a public servant, but particularly as, by all reports, the Russian military are absolutely hopeless. They're untrained, old guys who've been called out of retirement involuntarily and don't want to be there, whereas your mercenaries would be loving every single day they're not in a Russian prison.
Yes, so, that's right.
Yeah, I mean, imagine if you're a high-flyer PwC tax partner and a government decree came down that you had to go and, become a public service fat cat. You wouldn't like that. You'd march on Canberra.
And the whole thing is that everyone's going, oh, he must be a strategic genius because he went into Rostov, like this is Prigozhin, went into Rostov and basically took the entire military headquarters really easily, right? And
they gave all the mercenaries food. Did you see this? All the locals were like, "Oh my god, competent people! Here, have a sandwich."
Yeah, but you got to realise they did it on a Friday afternoon. Everyone was out of the office down at the pub. Like literally,
they were all having vodkas.
It was all they were all vodka.
Classic Russian vulnerability.
They'd put on their out of office, for the weekend on their email. So they probably already knew. They probably emailed ahead, going, "Oh, by the way, we're going to pop in and have a little conversation," which is what Prigozhin.
I'm murdering a beer, not a civilian. Yeah,
that's right. And so, at one level, you can say, "Oh, this Wagner guy, he's amazing. Like he just took 2 cities. He took the entire. There's only 5 military districts in Russia. He took.
Yes, and he knocked one of them out. Made it apparently halfway to Moscow.
He took out what is widely considered the most competent of the 5 military districts. Right?
The Chaser Report. News you can't trust.
The other criticism is why, if he was going to head to Moscow, why did he start 1,200 fucking kilometres south of Moscow? Why would you take out Rostov? Why wouldn't you go a little bit further north and then launch your invasion from there? This is my second theory, right? Which is that I think, and this is just a theory, I think that they thought that Putin and Medvedev, who's the second in charge in Russia, would both be in St. Petersburg, much closer on that weekend, because in St. Petersburg on that weekend is the ceremony of the Red Sails, right, which is this huge Russian ceremony, a fucking amazing. You know how Sydney Harbour does, New Year's Eve and they have a few fireworks and they look amazing, right? Think of that, but done by a nuclear superpower. Right, are
you saying are the sails red because they released a murderer and the sails used to be white?
That's right.
So many people have turned red.
Yeah. No. It
sounds like that's why Russia works these days.
You should look up the ceremony of the red sails. It's amazing.
Right.
These yachts, these old style, like Captain Cook style boats.
Oh wow!
With sails, elaborate sails, go out in the harbour there in St. Petersburg, and they've got fully red sails. They look incredible. And then all these fireworks come up. And so Putin goes down there every year. He's an old St. Petersburg guy. Like the whole gang who took over Russia back in 2000 from St. Petersburg. So so Prigozhin probably thought, well, they'll definitely be at the ceremony of red sails. We'll just be able to nab them there, capture them. We can take Russia, one fell swoop, boom. And instead,
I mean, that's interesting theory, Charles. But let me pose an alternative.
Yeah.
If you have a tech support contract,
Yes.
with somebody, and it's about to expire, let's say on the 1st of July.
Oh, yes.
Isn't it an amazing thing to just come in, do a whole bunch of tech support, and then say, look, you can take this over if you want to? Wasn't this a display of how good their troops were, and basically saying, don't disband us, we're the only effective power in the region? So they get half the way to, it's basically, it's a sales pitch.
Yes.
You get half the way to Moscow.
Yes.
The Russian army's useless. They couldn't stop us.
Yes.
We knocked them over in no time.
Yes.
Are you sure you want to cancel the contract?
Yes. But then Putin did cancel the contract.
Has he cancelled it though fully? Like, what's the latest? Because Prigozhin's gone off to Belarus, which is a puppet state.
Yeah,
so he's not really going. I mean, is Wagner just going to sneak their way back in the next few weeks?
Well,
or are they done?
I'm pretty sure they're done, Dom. Like, you can't move against Putin and then have Putin call you a traitor live on TV and pull that back. That's not. That's like. It's like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of the analogy here. Like that would be like calling an elbow a cunt and then trying to steal, like Jim Chalmers calling elbow a cunt and then trying to stay being treasurer. It's just not going to happen.
Well,
you know what
except
I mean?
that I'm looking up the latest news, and the Wagner forces have headed back to Ukraine.
So the Wagner forces are back to Ukraine, but from July the 1st, they'll be under the command of the Russian military, incompetent people. Meanwhile, Prigozhin has headed to Belarus. Wouldn't be particularly feeling that safe if I was Prigozhin. The funny thing about that,
he might want to stay away from Windows. You know how Windows can be very dangerous for enemies of Putin. So I'm looking at this. Yes, so you're right. They're all joining the military.
But there are two pieces of information coming out about Prigozhin. The first one,
right.
The New Yorker reported that he had taken 10,000 of his troops with him to Belarus.
Oh, okay. So maybe he'll run Belarus within another week.
A little bit paranoid that maybe something would happen to you if you had to take 10,000 of your closest mates with you, murderers with you.
Well, it is the one place you wouldn't want. Like, it's the one place you'd know you're definitely not safe from Putin, right? Like, as a third-party country.
Yeah, but then but Prigozhin and the what's his name, Lukashenko, they're mates. So actually,
thank God they're all mates.
Yeah. So I think I don't think he'll necessarily be murdered immediately. I mean, Putin has a history of allowing things to quieten down and then murdering people. Like,
I just think his next birthday cake will have polonium in it. That's all.
Exactly. But then the other news that I heard this morning, so I haven't had a chance to verify it at all, but is that nobody seems to actually know where Prigozhin has gone.
So he may already be dead.
He agreed to go to Belarus, but whether he's actually turned up there, I think is still just watch this space.
So you think it was genuinely an attempt at a coup? Because I really wasn't sure. I thought it was sort of a little bit of
no. I think it was office politics. He wanted the guy who was sort of acting like his boss, but actually the bigger boss. He knew that he was in the favour of the bigger boss. He wanted to bring it on with him. And then I think was surprised by the fact that he was able to take Rostov so easily and then realised, there's actually no troops in Russia. They're all in Ukraine. Like, this is the funny thing. Like, you go, what a remarkable achievement. He got within 200 kilometres of Moscow. Well, the answer to that is there's no troops in Russia. All the Russian troops are in the Ukraine. So Moscow is essentially undefended. Like, if you saw what was happening, so Putin ordered blockades to be set up around Moscow. Like, it was a genuine sort of security situation. But the blockades was being set up by the police. They were not being set up by the military.
Presumably, a lot of Russia's best troops are dead, right? Like, they've lost a lot of troops in Ukraine.
Yes.
So Prigozhin's might be there. The other thing I'm looking at here, Charles, is...
So I suppose what I'm saying is, yes, he launched a coup, like he attempted to sort of launch a march for justice sort of threaten Putin. But that was simply because he thought he was going to get Putin over in St. Petersburg. He failed and he was improvising. That was like plan B. He didn't intend to march on Moscow, but it was like, I have to do something so that I've got a chip to trade so that I can get the fuck out of here without being killed.
I mean, this reminds me, Charles, of the battle that's been going on between Apple and its workers. This is basically union rights.
Yes.
You know, the employer Russian military is trying to sort of vertically integrate everybody in and not have any independent rights. He's basically a fighter for labour freedom.
Oh, yeah. He's the friend of the worker.
Friend of the worker, that's
the
right.
Worker
Particularly if the worker's locked up for murder.
Yeah. When your work is murdering, he's on your side. He's
the union boss of the murderers. The other thing that people are noting, bearing in mind that we don't know if he's still alive, is that because if you look at Belarus on the map, because it's to the north of Ukraine, there's a suggestion that there might be another offensive involving him from the north. So thereby, who knows what will happen? But I guess we'll find out if he's an enemy of the state or not.
I even saw a suggestion that maybe the trade was actually, well, why don't you go to Belarus and then just murder Lukashenko and take over as president of Belarus?
That's a good deal. If you want to run a country, run that country, not this one.
Yeah.
That's not a bad... And then Ukraine's got enemies on both sides.
But I don't think Putin rewards traitors like that. I don't think... And also, why would you launch it took 8 months to take the regional town of Bakhmut, which is a significant town, but it's like taking, I don't know, Goulburn or Geelong or something in Australia.
Geelong, let's say Geelong, because if you try to take Geelong, you'd get some resistance.
Yeah.
They're tough down there.
Yeah, but I'm just saying it's not like, no, it's not like taking.
It's not even like taking Wollongong.
So if you're saying, oh well, why doesn't he launch an attack on Kyiv from the north? Well, the answer is, so you want him to completely redo all his supply lines. It just doesn't make any sense.
Another conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
But the thing is with it, Charles. This has yet again shown how shithouse Russia's army is. This is the thing. We all, for so many years, were in terror of the great Russian army with its ruthless, relentless sort of march.
Yes.
That's not it at all. Even if it had any capabilities, they've left a lot of them disabled or dead in Ukraine. I mean, this is a shadow. Putin looks even weaker now, doesn't he, than he did at the start of this particular misadventure.
Oh, yeah. No, there's two losers out of this. First one is Putin. Second one is China. So
China?
Yeah.
How does China? I thought you were going to say Prigozhin, who's not looking so good.
Yeah.
How does China lose?
Well, China backed in Putin. Like China, I mean, they've been sort of a little bit sort of discreet about it, but essentially Xi Jinping has spent the last few years essentially endorsing Putin's sort of thing and making an ally out of Putin and getting advantage out of that. And what a bad bet. What a bad bet.
I mean, unless Russia now becomes a client state of China.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's certainly been fun following this on Twitter.
Yes.
Because any sense that it's a reliable news source now has been completely destroyed.
Oh, no, yeah.
Where every single person who might know what they're talking about just gets immediately swamped by an army of blue tick idiots.
I don't know what you did over the weekend, but I spent most of my time setting up accounts that sounded plausibly Russian sounding, buying a blue tick and then getting to the top of everyone's feed.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's great fun.
Yeah, it's free speech in action.
Yeah, exactly.
Such a great way to know what's going on. Well, thank you for explaining all that, Charles. I now feel that I know more or that I'm completely wrong. I don't know which it is. I suppose time will tell. Although I will say, if you haven't listened to the submarine episode, as macabre and sad as the whole thing is, you weren't wrong. You weren't wrong. I'm going to say, it's not often that I say this of you, Charles, but on this occasion, tragic, awful occasion of hubris being visited with the terrible result, you weren't wrong. So I'll give you credit. Our curious from Road. We're part of the Iconoclast Network, and we'll keep you posted. Apparently, Charles Firth, the most reliable commentator on geopolitics.
Yeah, that's right.
You can find him here every day.
And you can check me out at Igor on Twitter.
Look for the blue tick that guarantees reliability.
See ya.